Hi, this is to demo how to add a key to key master using our API. To do this, you'll want to use our keys API. And to navigate to this specific location, there's a few ways. The easiest is by clicking at the top, clicking on Docs, Full Documentation, click under our APIs, navigate down to Keys. Here you'll see a few different options. In this case, we want to import a key. We're going to import a public and private key into KeyMaster via FusionAuth APIs. So we click on Import Key, and it tells us that this will import an existing key into FusionAuth. If you're signing something uniquely within your organization and you need a key specifically for different cryptographic reasons, this is the endpoint to use. And so it tells us here that we need to do a post to this endpoint. We can call it whatever we want. I'm going to let FusionAuth auto-generate the key ID, but if you wanted, you could call it whatever nomenclature you felt was appropriate. Generally, when things are auto-generated by FusionAuth, I let them be that way. The only other option is the request body, what to include within the request. You can see here we have an outer key object and attributes of that object that we can specify. In this particular video, all we're going to specify is the algorithm used to make the keys that we're importing. Very commonly you'll see a RS-256, which is what we'll be using, but folks can use a number of algorithms when importing different keys. We'll also be using the certificate, as well as the private key, and finally just the casual name that it can be referred to within FusionAuth. This, of course, is different than the actual ID. And so in this case, what I've done is I've set up Insomnia with some basic parameters already. You can see we have this outer key object and attributes that we need to define. And like I said, we're only going to be defining 4 of them. My keys that I generated, and this you can see from a previous example, I've already had this work, but normally this will be blank for you in Postman or Insomnia, but this will be 256. Yours may be different depending on your organizational needs. I'm going to call this key in KeyMaster. This key can sign. You could call it, this is my organization's favorite key. Whatever you wanted to call it, you can do it here. The big thing here is our private key string and our certificate string. And I'm calling these strings because they are specified by our documentation that the certificate is a string. It is optional, but in this case we're going to import with a certificate string, and also it specifies that the private key is a string as well. And so to get my string for my private key, I've set up kind of an example key setup. And so I have a private PEM encoded key, a public PEM encoded key, a certificate signing request. If you are trying to have like a root authority approve your certificate or validate you would use this as an intermediary step. In this example, I self-sign, say I am the authority, and I have my certificate. So in this case, we'll really be using the certificate and the private PEM. And so when you know, one thing you know about a PEM, or if you haven't worked with PEMs before, rather, they have carriage returns. Meaning here you can see they kind of cut off, and they're designed to fit within a specific size on a monitor. And so to send this over as a string using JSON and Insomnia, we're going to have to make sure they're formatted correctly. There's a number of ways you can do that, but to get this PEM encoded private key into a better format, I'm going to use an awk command, and it's going to look like this. And so once I run this, it's going to insert these new line characters. It's basically going to take this carriage return and make it one massive soft wrap string. I'm going to copy this. Oops. And that's going to go in my string area for private key. Now I just need to do my certificate. So grab this. Okay, so this is the basic request that's been constructed. Again, we have it on the import API. We're doing a post request. We're sending JSON. You always have options, but we always send JSON. We'll specify if it's something else. Most of our documentation requires JSON. I've also specified 3 headers, which are common to all things using APIs in FusionAuth. The authorization header, which is an API key that I've created. The tenant ID, which is usually required or helpful to have, and the content type, which is application JSON. So a post to this endpoint with these 3 headers with a key object and a few attributes in JSON. Now when I hit send, I'll get OK. You can ignore the previous OK, but I was testing it before this video and it did work. So it imported this key, and the benefit to us is now if I go into my instance, which is running at that host, and I go into key master, it's empty. But if I refresh, I now have this key can sign, and I can prove that it is a sign and verify key, and not only that, it has certificate information, public key information, and private key information, which is intentionally obfuscated so that we don't leak sensitive information. More importantly, once it's imported in this manner, if I go into applications, if I create a dummy application and I go into the SAML tab, I enable SAML, now this key will show up as a signing key. So this is how you can effectively import a signing key into FusionAuth via API.